The lift towers stood 200 feet over the rail yards, and at night the wind hummed in the cables. He'd slept in the counterweight chamber 4 nights now, and no one down in the yards ever thought to look up. He is on his feet before the groan finishes climbing the ropes. The chamber he lives in is a shaft, a tall steel-framed throat inside the south tower, and hanging in it, a hand's reach from the service platform he sleeps on, is the counterweight itself, a single block of concrete taller than a boxcar, cast to the exact weight of the span far below, so that the whole bridge balances on a wire like a scale that has found its rest. The block hangs from 4 wire ropes. The ropes run straight up the shaft to the top of the tower. Over the great grooved sheaves the pulleys, each one wider than a truck, is long and back down the outside face to the span itself. That is the entire principle of the machine, and he had understood it in an hour. When the span rises, the counterweight falls. When the span settles, the counterweight climbs. The block and the bridge trade places forever, the way a breath trades in for out, and the block falls down the shaft, down through the platform where he stands. He knows this. He has known it since the first night, the way you know the shape of a room you sleep in. What he does not know what stops him now, with his blood gone to ice, is the sound. The lift he has heard 4 times before begins with a clean mechanical hum, the motor high in the tower taking up the load, the ropes singing a single even note as the block starts down. This does not begin clean. This begins with a groan, low and uneven, a sound with a catch in it, a note that bends where it should hold. Something in the ropes is not right, and far below, in the dark of the operator's house that has stood empty and unlit every night of his 4, a light has come on. He looks up the shaft at the block beginning, slowly, to descend toward him, and he understands that this is not going to be a routine lift. He gets clear the way he has drilled himself to get clear. There is a maintenance ladder bolted to the shaft wall, running up past the descending block into the dead space above it, and a catwalk that crosses to the outer face of the tower, and he goes for it, flat and fast, off the platform and onto the ladder rungs before the counterweight can close the gap. His hands know the rungs. He has climbed them in the dark a dozen times for the pleasure of it, never once thinking he would climb them to save his life. The cold steel bites his palms. Below him, the block slides down its guides with that terrible patience, 40 feet of concrete moving no faster than a man walks, which is the thing that makes it worse. You could almost believe you had time, right up until you didn't. He climbs 3 body lengths and swings out onto the catwalk grating, the yards a dizzy scatter of light, 200 feet, straight down through the mesh under his boots, and he presses himself against the cold outer frame of the tower and holds on and makes himself breathe. From there, safe, he watches the block come down past where his bed was, ponderous and patient, 100 tons of concrete sliding down toward the bottom of the shaft. Where he was lying 90 seconds ago, there is now a wall of moving concrete. If he had slept through the change in the sound, if the groan had been a clean hum and he had trusted it and stayed there, would be nothing left of him to find. The thought arrives cold and clear, and he sets it aside because there is no time for it, because something else is wrong, and he is the only one who can see it, but it comes down wrong. He can see it now that he is above it and beside it instead of on it. The block should ride level. All 4 ropes sharing the load, all 4 paying out over their sheaves at the same rate. It is not at the riding level. One corner is lagging, hanging a few degrees off true, and the rope on that corner is the one making the groan. He follows the rope up with his eyes to where it crosses its sheave at the top of the tower, and even in the dark, even at this distance, he can see the trouble. The rope is not sitting right in its groove. It is riding up the flange, chattering, and every time it chatters, the whole block jerks and the groan bends, and he knows, with the certainty of someone who has spent 4 days learning this machine from the inside, that a wire rope that climbs its sheave groove is a wire rope about to jump the sheave altogether. If it jumps, the block will hang on 3 ropes instead of 4, and a counterweight cast to hang on 4 ropes, suddenly swinging its full weight onto 3, will do one of 2 things. It will snap another rope in the shock, or it will slew in its guides and jam. And either way, the span it balances, halfway up between the towers with a vessel coming under it, will stop being a bridge in a manner no one down there is ready for. He is perhaps the only person who can see the rope, and he is not supposed to exist. He had found the bridge 4 nights ago by its light. He had been down in the rail yards at dusk. Moving the way he moved everywhere without a destination, keeping to the seams between the standing strings of cars, looking for somewhere dry and unwatched to put his back for the night when he had seen it. Come on. High up 200 feet over the yards, a single navigation light on the top of a tower, a steady red eye against a sky going out. Something about it had held him. He could not have said what. He had stood between 2 coal hoppers in the last of the day and watched that light and felt, absurdly, that it was showing him a way up out of the ground where he had lived so long, and he had gone toward it the way you go toward a thing you have decided, without deciding, that you need. The way up was easier than it should have been. The base of the south tower had a service door with a hasp but no lock, and inside, a steel switchback stair climbed the leg of the tower into the dark, and he had climbed it past the machinery deck, up into the throat of the tower, and found the counterweight chamber, and understood in the flashlight's beam that he had walked into the inside of a scale. The great block hanging in its shaft, the 4 ropes rising to the wheels above, the service platform tucked to one side, out of the block's path, wide enough for a body to lie on. It was dry. It was warm with the day's stored heat in the steel. It was 200 feet above every person who might have wanted to know where he was. He had put his back to the frame that night and slept better than he had in months. By the second night, he had the rhythm of the place. High up, the wind never stopped. It hummed in the ropes, a low, steady chord that changed pitch with its strength, rising to a thin wail in the gusts, and sinking to something almost like a voice when it eased, and he learned to sleep inside that hum the way you sleep beside a river. The chamber had its own weather. It was warmest just after dark, when the steel gave back the sun, and coldest in the last hour before dawn, when the metal pulled the heat out of him through the bedroll and he woke curled tight. It smelled of grease and cold iron, and faintly of the river below, a green, silty smell that rose up the shaft in the night air. He came to know it all by feel in the dark. The rungs of the ladder, the edge of the platform, the exact reach to the block that he must never cross. And on the 3rd night, he had felt his first lift and learned what he was living inside of. It had come near midnight, the bell far below, the motor high in the tower, taking up its load, the ropes rising into a single clean singing note, and the great block had begun to descend past his platform, smooth and level and unhurried, 4 ropes paying out as one, and he had pressed himself back against the frame and watched 100 tons of concrete slide down its guides an arm's length from his face. It had terrified him, and it had thrilled him in equal measure. And when it was over, when the span had settled somewhere below, and the block had climbed back up its shaft to hang once more beside him, he had understood the machine completely, the way his father understood machines, all at once and in his body, the span and the block trading places over the wheels, breathe in, breathe out. He had lain awake a long time after, feeling the steel give back the last of the day's warmth, listening to the wind change the pitch of the ropes, feeling almost safe, which he knew even then was a dangerous thing to feel. That had been a good lift, a clean one. The ropes had sung, and the block had ridden true, and nothing in the whole 200 feet of steel had groaned. Now the ropes groan, and the block rides untrue, and everything he learned in 3 safe nights is worth exactly nothing unless he does something with it. The operator does not know. He works this out fast, watching the light in the house, watching the calm, untroubled rhythm of the lift proceed as if nothing were wrong. From down there, from the control desk, the machine is behaving, the ammeters reading normal, the span rising smoothly, the counterweight descending on schedule. The fault is up high, in the throat of the tower, in a groove 180 feet above the operator's head. And the only sign of it is a groan that the wind and the motor and the river would swallow long before it reached the house. The operator is running a bridge that is quietly coming apart and has no way to know it. He, on the catwalk, has every way to know it. He can hear the catch in the rope. He can see the chatter in the groove. He can feel, when the block jerks, the whole tower flinches through the steel under his hands. He has the one piece of information that matters, and it is useless where it is, locked inside a boy who has spent his whole life making sure no one knows where he is. He looks down at the operator's house, its single-lit window, and he feels the old refusal rise in him, automatic and total. Stay hidden. Stay small. This is not your bridge. This is not your problem. You were never here. Nobody knows you exist. Keep it that way. He has kept it that way through every town and every yard and every cold high place he has slept in for a year. And it has never once failed him. But there is a groan in the ropes, and a light in the window, and a vessel somewhere on the Black River, sliding toward a span that might not hold, and he stands on the catwalk 200 feet in the air and feels the whole weight of a choice he has made before come down on him again. And then the machine makes the choice sharper, high above him, where the south rope rides its climbing groove. Something lets go. 200 feet of steel swallows most of it, but he feels it in the catwalk before he hears it. A small, hard shock that travels down the frame into his boots, and then the sound arrives, a flat metallic snap like a struck rail. A wire has parted. One of the dozens of fine wires laid up into the strand has fatigued through and sprung, and the groan of the rope changes pitch as it deepens, roughens, and the block below jerks in its guides, slewing another degree off true. He knows exactly what he is hearing because his father taught it to him with a rag and a length of old cable. A rope does not part all at once. It parts one wire at a time, and each parting throws more load onto the wires that remain. And the failures come faster and faster as fewer wires carry more weight until the rope reaches the moment where the last of them go together. He has just heard the first. He does not know how many are left before the last. Nobody does. That is the terror of it. The clock is real now and running, and its face is hidden. The vessel is still coming. The span still hangs half lifted. And every second he stands here deciding, is a second closer to a sound like that one. But final. His father had died in the spring, and there had been a funeral, and at the funeral he had said nothing. He lets himself have it now, on the catwalk, because there is nothing to do but wait and watch the rope and decide, and the memory has been waiting a year for a quiet enough moment to be looked at. Was his father been a rigger, a man who worked high steel, who spent his life on ropes and cables, and the trust between them, who could look at a wire and tell you how much life was left in it by the way the light caught the broken wires that stood up from it like whiskers. Jaggers, his father called them. When a wire rope starts to die, individual wires fatigue and snap and spring out from the strand, and you run a rag down the rope, and the jaggers catch it, and that is how you know. His father had taught him that with a rag and a length of old cable in the yard behind the house, back when there was a house and a yard and a father to stand in it. They had not been speaking at the end. That was the thing. There had been a falling out the shape of which he can no longer entirely remember, a stupid hard thing that had gone on too long, the way those things do pride on both sides, a door left unknocked on, weeks turning into months, while each of them waited for the other to be the first to give. And then there was no more time to fix it. And then there was a funeral. He remembers the church, cold for spring, the smell of lilies gone slightly sweet and rotten in the heat of too many bodies, the way his own collar felt like a hand at his throat. He remembers the coffin and the terrible ordinariness of it. A box, a thing his father would have looked at and told you how it was joined. And at the funeral, when the moment came for someone to stand and say what the man had been, he had sat in the back with the words in his throat and had not stood. He had told himself he would. He had made himself a promise, sitting there, standing up, saying it, keeping faith with him, and he had broken it in the same breath and had walked out of the church into the spring cold and had kept walking and had not stopped walking until a bridge 200 feet in the air. He tells himself on the bad nights that the silence in that church was grief. He knows on the worst nights that it was the same thing it has always been. The silence was safe, and he chose safe, the way he always chooses safe, the way he chose the seams between the rail cars and the empty high places where no one could ask anything of him. He had failed to stand up when standing up was the whole of what was asked. He had let the silence win because the silence was safe. And here, now, is a rope his father would have read in a heartbeat, and a stranger in a lit window who does not know it is fraying, and the exact same choice laid out again on a catwalk in the dark. Stay silent and safe, or stand up and speak. You run a rag down the rope, and the jaggers tell you. He goes. The decision does not feel like courage. That is the thing he will remember about it later, that it did not feel grand, did not feel like a man conquering his own nature. It felt like finally setting down something heavy he had been carrying so long he had stopped noticing its weight. For a year, the silence had been a place he lived, safe and high and empty, and he steps out of it now the way he stepped onto the catwalk. One motion, no looking down. The year's weight of it falls away behind him, and there is only the rope and the light in the window and the stair. He goes down the tower. There is a service stair inside the south tower, a steel switchback that drops from the machinery deck to the ground, and he takes it in the dark 2 treads at a time, his hand skidding on the cold rail, the groan of the rope following him down the shaft like a thing calling after him. He does not let himself think about what waits at the bottom, the exposure of it, the end of being no one, the operator's face, when a filthy stranger comes out of the guts of a bridge in the middle of a lift. He thinks only about the rope. One thing at a time. His father's whole trade was one thing at a time, high up where thinking about all of it at once would kill you. He comes off the stair at the base of the tower and crosses the tracks toward the operator's house, and every step across the open ground is a step out of the life he has built. This is the thing he swore against. For a year he has been no one, no name on a form, no face anyone could place, a person who was never anywhere. Now he is running across a lit rail yard toward a stranger's door, making himself real, undoing in 90 seconds the thing it took him a year to become. The ground is uneven under his boots, the rails greasy, the gravel loud. A switch light throws his shadow long across the ties. He is exposed, visible, findable, and he keeps running. And he is shouting before he reaches the house. Shout up at the lit window words that come out wrong and cracked from a voice that has not been used to speak to a person in days. The south rope, the north tower sheave, it's climbing the groove. Stop the lift, stop the lift. The door opens. A man stands in it, older, gray, the deliberate stillness of someone who has run this bridge through 30 years of nights, and does not startle easily, and for one long second. The two of them simply look at each other across the tracks, the stranger and the ghost, while overhead the ropes groan. Then the operator does the thing that saves everyone. He does not ask who the boy is. He hears south rope, and climbing the groove in the mouth of someone close enough to the towers to know, and he turns without a word and goes to his desk and stops the lift, halts the span where it hangs, takes the load off the motor, and reaches for the phone to hold the vessel back below the raised span until the bridge can be checked. They climb the north tower together in the last of the dark, because the operator will not take a boy's word for a thing like this, and neither will he take the boy along blind. He hands him a light and tells him to come and look, since he is the one who saw it. The climb is long and the operator does it slowly, methodically, a man who has learned that hurry is how you die on high steel. They go up the switchback stair inside the north leg, past the machinery deck where the drive motor and the reduction gears sit quiet, now, up to the very top of the tower where the sheaves are the great grooved wheels, one for each rope, that carry the whole trading weight of the bridge. Up here the wind is a constant open-handed push, and the yards below are a scatter of small lights, and the river beyond them is a black nothing with the dark shape of the waiting vessel on it. The boy has never been to the top of the towers. His chamber was in the south leg, lower. He sees now the whole of the machine he has been living inside the ropes, coming up over the sheaves and running down the outer faces to the span, hung between the towers, the counterweights balancing it in their shafts, the elegant, simple truth of it laid out in steel against the paling sky. The sheave stands taller than both of them, and the fault is plain now under the flashlight. The south rope has indeed climbed halfway up the flange of its groove, chattering, riding where it should never ride, and where it has been chattering, the wires have begun to give. The operator pulls a rag from his hip pocket and runs it slowly down the rope below the sheave and stops, and the boy sees him feel it, the jaggers, the broken wires standing up from the strand, catching on the cloth the way they used to catch on his father's rag in the yard. 2, 3, 4 of them, a hand span apart, and one place where a whole cluster has gone and the strand has flattened. The operator holds the light close and does not speak for a moment. Then he says quietly, not to the boy exactly, that the rope has come off its groove, because a guide sheave lower down has seized, throwing the whole run out of line, and that if this had gone another 2 lifts, the rope would have parted at that flat place. And a parted rope on a loaded counterweight, he says, is the kind of thing that ends up in reports with a lot of names in it. He does not say the boy's name, because he does not know it, because the boy does not give it. But he looks at him differently after the rope. He looks at him the way his father used to look at a good splice, with a kind of surprised respect that a thing done right can come from a source you did not expect. They come down out of the tower as the sky begins to go from black to the deep gray that comes before color. And from the machinery deck the boy sees, for the first time, the thing he saved, below the raised span, out on the river that is just beginning to catch the light. The vessel sits at anchor, where the operator's phone call held at a low coastal freighter, rust-streaked, its deck lights burning, small figures moving along its rail, a person at the bow, watching the bridge with the patience of someone used to waiting on machinery. He had known there was a vessel. He had heard it in his reasoning, an abstraction, a thing that made the rope matter. Now, it is a boat with people on it. Ordinary people doing ordinary early morning work who had been sliding toward a span, balanced on a rope, with a flat place in it, and had no idea, and who will pass under the bridge later this morning, when a new rope is on the sheave, and never know that a boy they will never see stood up in the dark and kept the span from coming down on them. The light comes up pink along the freighter's deckhouse and lays a thin, bright line down the river, and the boy stands on the cold steel and watches it, and something in his chest that has been clenched for a year loosens by a single notch. He has spent that year believing he was no one, that no one was better, that no one could not fail anybody, because no one was not there. And here is a boat full of somebodies who are going to have an ordinary day, a breakfast, a shift, a berth reached on time because no one was there after all. It is a strange arithmetic, and he turns it over and cannot make it come out the way it used to. The lift stays down. The vessel waits on the river below until the crews come at dawn to change out a rope no one else had known was dying, and the bridge that might have come apart holds because a boy who was not there stood up and said so. The operator does not turn him in. He has time, in the hour before the day crew arrives, to work out that this is what is going to happen, to watch the man decide it. The way he watched his own refusal rise and fall on the catwalk. The operator makes coffee on a hot plate in the little house and gives him a cup, and asks him no questions he cannot answer. He does not ask where the boy sleeps, though he plainly knows now, plainly has known. The counterweight chamber was not as empty as the logbook said. There had been a bedroll up there for 4 days, and a bridgeman notices a thing like that and says nothing until there is a reason to. He talks instead about the bridge, about the 4 ropes, and how they are matched and changed out in complete sets, so their wear stays even, because a rope among 3 older ropes carries wrong and dies young, about the sheaves that were forged in a shipyard that does not exist anymore, their grooves recut twice in his time, about the balance that lets a 200-foot span be lifted by a motor no bigger than a car's, because the counterweight does the real work and the motor only overcomes the friction and the wind. The span and the block, forever trading places over the wheels at the top of the towers. Breathe in, breathe out. The boy listens the way he listens to everything, storing it, and understands that the man is handing him the machine on purpose. The way you hand a thing to someone you have decided is not a stranger anymore. He has not been handed anything by anyone since a yard behind a house with a rag and a length of cable. He wraps both hands around the coffee and lets it be warmth, which is a thing he can accept without owing anything for it. And he does not trust the feeling in his chest, and he does not make it go away either. When the light comes gray over the yards, the operator tells him the crew arrives at 7. He does not tell him to go. He tells him the time, which is a different thing, and the boy understands the difference, understands that he is being given the grace of leaving on his own feet instead of being made to, which is the one grace he was never given anywhere else, and which, from this particular man, on this particular morning, feels less like being turned out than like being trusted to know when to go. He climbs back up the tower one last time as the sky pales into the counterweight chamber onto the service platform where his bedroll still is. He gathers it. He rolls it tight. He has been seen now, has come down out of the dark and stood in a lit doorway and been a person, which is the one thing he swore he would never do again. And the strange part, the part he turns over as he ties the roll, is that it does not feel like losing. He had thought that being seen would cost him everything. It has cost him the chamber, which he cannot go back to now that it is known, but it has given him back the thing he left in a church a year ago, the thing he thought he had broken past mending. He stood up. When standing up was the whole of what was asked, this time he stood. He takes out the pocket knife with his father's initials, worn nearly smooth, and folds it open and closed once, the way his father used to, a habit passed down through the hands without a word. Then he puts it away and shoulders the bedroll and goes down the tower for the last time. He does not know where he is going. That has never been a thing his life came with. He crosses the tracks in the gray light and starts toward the edge of the yards. And behind him the day crew is arriving, small figures at the base of the towers, unspooling a new rope for the sheave he found. At the fence, he stops. Someone has left something on the post set there deliberately, where a person leaving the yards would have to pass it. It is a rigger's rag, clean, folded once, the kind you run down a rope to feel for the broken wires, the kind his father kept a dozen of. He picks it up. It is soft with washing, worn thin at the folds, a working thing that has been used and kept and used again. He does not know if the operator left it, or a crewman, or whether it has simply been snagged on that post for a season, but it is a rigger's rag, and it is folded the way his father folded his, corner to corner, and then in half, a particular fold he had not thought about in a year, and that his own hands recognized before his eyes did. He stands at the fence, in the first light, holding it, and for a long moment he does not move. Behind him the day crew works at the base of the towers, unspooling the new rope, their voices carrying flat across the yards. Ahead of him the fence, and the road, and the long gray country he has been crossing for a year without a reason to stop anywhere in it, and he finds himself wondering, for the first time in that whole year, whose hands taught the person who left the rag, whether the fold means what he thinks it means, whether somewhere up the line there is a yard and a rope and a man who folds a rag corner to corner and then in half, and whether a person could walk toward a thing like that for once instead of away. He puts the rag in his pocket beside the knife with the worn initials, two folded things from two pairs of hands, and the pocket sits warm against his hip. Then he goes through the fence, into the light, and starts up the line. The crews came in, on not away from the yards this time, for once, but along them, toward wherever the rag came from. For the first time in a long time, He is not entirely sure he is only running.